Hi, my name is Brad Wolf. I am product manager for Toad for MySQL. Today we're going to talk about Toad for MySQL as it's connected to an Amazon Aurora instance. So for those that aren't familiar, Toad is the de facto standard for database development and administration tools. It's universally loved by users of many database platforms, including relational as well as non-relational databases. The community is large and thriving. I'd urge you to visit Toad World after the demo to learn more about the product. In today's demo, we'll start with a very common and therefore very useful workflow. That is the connectivity, connecting to a database, browsing objects, understanding what can be joined, generating a data set, understanding who is busy in a data set in a database by looking at the active sessions, generating an ER diagram, schema comparison, and then automating some of these key features. Let's get started. All right, so this is a Toad for MySQL user interface. The first thing we're going to do is connect it to an Aurora instance. So I'm just going to click on the New Database Connection shortcut. And in the host field, I'm just going to add the name of my Amazon Aurora database instance, and then of course my username and password information will be entered here. Once I've created that connection, it's very easy to switch between. So I've got a local MySQL connection, but then I've also got the connection to the remote Aurora instance as well. So once I've established a connection, you can see what we call the left-hand side broken out by categories. Got a number of objects here. What I'm going to focus on, though, is a particular table, this order record table. When I double-click on it, the right-hand side updates, and I see all the underlying detail, including metadata describing this object, some of the underlying data. This gives me the first 1,000 records if there's more than 1,000. But in my case, I'm actually interested in joining this table to another. So how do I do that? Well, there's a couple ways to do this. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the Constraints tab. Constraints tab tells me what constraints I have, what kind they are. And if I mouse over, I can also see the reference. So what this is telling me is for this table, I have a foreign key called movie ID, and it's actually referencing another table, T_movie, using that same key. So now I know I can join and get data from either of these tables. Another way I can explore that same relationship is I can right-click, send to what we call a database diagram. What the database diagram is going to tell me, by default, one layer of referential integrity. And once again, we have that same relationship, only this time graphical. So T_order record, customer ID is joined to customer by that same column, movie ID joined to T_movie by that same column, and I have that information in a way that may also be useful. The final way I can leverage this information is I can actually go into the query editor, and the query editor is actually intelligent enough to know that if I want to select from T_order record and join on a table, Toad goes ahead and presents the two alternatives that we're already aware of. So we have the relationship to both our movie and T customer tables. All I have to do to finish that join is make a selection and then go ahead and run that query. So another really key feature for anyone using Amazon Aurora is understanding who is active in the database. So in this example, I've got a table that I'm interested in, this customer table. I'm just going to send or generate SQL to the editor, a select statement. This particular SQL statement is a long-running one. And I know that because I've already done some investigation. You can see the status, it's still running. But what if other users are active and you want to understand who is responsible or who is running SQL in your Amazon instance? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into Tools, Monitor, and I'm going to kick off the Session Monitor. So Session Monitor gives me a snapshot of the current activity in the database. Right now it's a little cramped, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that somewhere where I can actually see it. So I'm going to give it a little more real estate to work with. What this is showing me is the upper portion. I'm actually seeing some trending information describing queries, speeds, and resources used. You'll also see below, I can also see a breakout of activity by user. So here's the user column. Here's the current activity as well as a connection. So these are connections to the Toad database. Some of the really powerful features are if I have dozens of users, I can actually just drag and drop to group by, and this will give me a little histogram describing the number of users and an aggregation of that. Also really key here, I also get to see the underlying SQL. So this is telling me, okay, there's a long-running query, or that could be pretty subjective, but there is some activity, and here's exactly what it is. So it's a select statement. I can also right-click and then copy either the rows or cells. In this case, either will do. I'm just going to copy the row, and then maybe, pending my choice for how to format that grid data, go ahead and paste it into a brand new editor. So if I perhaps wanted to do some exploration of or optimization of this code, I actually have a way to not only identify it, but also add it to an editor for some refinement. So another really powerful feature for the Aurora user is the schema comparison. Now you can see I've done a schema comparison already, but what's interesting here is the fact that I'm actually comparing a local MySQL instance to a remote Amazon Aurora instance. So let's talk a little bit about that. If I go into Tools, Compare, you'll note the various options. I did a schema compare. There's also a data compare here as well. The launching of that interface is very intuitive because it's wizard driven. So here's an example. I'm just going to drop this down, grab my local MySQL instance, choose the database that I'd like to compare, and then map that to a target environment. So maybe the Toad database on my Aurora instance, run the compare. The result is what we see here on the left-hand side. You've got a breakout of the detected differences. This would suggest a difference in that C customer exists in both environments. The delta is highlighted automatically, so we have the addition of some indexes, and then the sync script to either drop or create, depending on the need, is automatically generated. I can synchronize that easily as well. There's also options to in certain cases where an object should be created or dropped, the appropriate script is generated automatically. So being able to compare those environments is very interesting and very useful for the Aurora user. So once you're more familiar with Toad, one of the more powerful things you can do then with the product is leverage the automation interface. So think of it this way. The automation interface lets you automate those mundane tasks that are time consuming. So for example, let's say we want to run that long running query that takes hours to run and ties up the database, and we want to do that on a regular interval. Well, we can launch the automation interface, choose from any of these activities. We can compare, we can export, we can import, which is extremely powerful. In this case, I'm just going to execute a script. For this operation then, I've added the execute script action to a workflow. So from top to bottom, All I need to do now is specify the connection, which will be my Amazon Aurora connection, specify the script. The ellipses will let me browse for that. And once I've included that script, I'll actually see a preview of it. Along with the script to be run, I also can specify the output format. In this case, I want an Excel spreadsheet, which I've specified the name through that set of ellipses. Once I've determined what to run, then I can determine what to do with it. There's a lot of functionality here. The one I'll focus on is a favorite, which is, of course, send an email. So after we run this script, let's send an email to all the stakeholders in our organization from me to them. And then, of course, as an attachment, perhaps I'd like to add the resulting Excel spreadsheet from the previous step. Or if it's a rather large object, maybe I just add a link to that within the body. So very powerful, very, very widely used and frankly under leveraged by a lot of users. So hopefully this helps inspire you to get the most out of the automation interface. So that's good. You've taken your first step into a larger world. I hope that I've inspired you to investigate further. To help with that effort, I encourage you to look at Toad World. It's a wonderful free resource, and I do thank you very much for your time.